Captain Daniel Hayes had always believed his days of adventure were over. He was not a young soldier anymore. His hair carried silver streaks, his face had lines that spoke of years in battles and lonely journeys through the stars. Yet somehow fate never left him alone. His small ship, a patched-together freighter he had nicknamed Endeavor's Rest, drifted too close to a world not marked on human maps. He thought it was just another forgotten planet, silent and harmless. But the world was not silent. The first thing Daniel noticed when he entered its orbit was the faint shimmer of ruined cities below. From space they looked like broken jewels scattered across a barren desert. Towers crumbled, ancient bridges hung in pieces, and yet here and there faint signs of life glimmered. Against his better judgment, Daniel set his ship down. Curiosity had always been his greatest weakness. The air was thin, but breathable. The wind carried the smell of ash and dust, a memory of firestorms long past. Daniel adjusted the old rifle slung over his shoulder, more for comfort than confidence. He walked through streets where statues of proud warriors lay broken at the feet of toppled gates. Something had destroyed this world, but something still lived here. His instincts screamed caution, but Daniel had never listened well to instincts when curiosity called louder. That was when he heard the sound. Metal boots against stone. He spun, rifle raised. Shapes emerged from the shadows. Tall figures in armor of a style he had never seen. Their skin shimmered faintly under the pale sun, marked with colors that seemed almost carved into them. Their weapons, long spears of humming energy, were aimed directly at him. "Human," one of them hissed, voice sharp with disbelief. "You should not be here." Daniel opened his hands, lowering his weapon slowly. "I didn't know this place was claimed. I'll leave." But they did not lower their spears. Instead, they circled him like wolves around prey. He was pushed forward, forced through half-ruined gates into what looked like an ancient palace. Its walls, though cracked, still carried murals of battles, tales of warriors with crowns of fire and banners of beasts unknown to Earth. And there, on a throne that seemed too large for her tired form, sat the queen. Her crown was bent but still glowed faintly, carved from some mineral that shimmered like captured starlight. Her eyes were sharp yet heavy with years, a weight of loss Daniel could almost feel in the air. She was beautiful once, he realized, and even now there was majesty in her presence, though it was marked by exhaustion. The guards shoved Daniel to his knees. He wanted to protest, but something in the queen's eyes silenced him. She raised a hand, thin yet steady, and the guards obeyed, stepping back. "A human," she whispered, as if the word carried both wonder and sorrow. "I never thought I would see one here." Daniel swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to intrude. If this world belongs to you, I'll leave it at once." Her lips curved in a sad smile. "Leave? No one leaves this world. It is a cage now. One built by war and betrayal. You are already caught inside." The hall was silent, her voice echoing against broken marble. Then she leaned forward, her gaze sharp enough to pierce him. "I am Queen Serenia of the Thaylen Dominion," she said, "or what is left of it. Once my armies marched across stars. Now my empire is ash and dust. I am too old for this war. My enemies wait for my final breath. My people have no hope." Daniel did not know what answer she expected from him. He was only one man, a drifter with no army and no throne. But the queen was not done. Her hand waved, and from behind the throne stepped another figure. Daniel's breath caught for a moment. It was a young woman, tall, strong, with the same faint shimmer on her skin as the queen, but her eyes blazed with fire instead of weariness. She carried herself with pride, though Daniel could see the tension in her clenched fists. "My daughter," the queen said softly. "Princess Layara. She is all that remains of my bloodline. My enemies will not stop until she is dead. I cannot shield her any longer. My body is too tired, my spirit too worn." The princess's jaw tightened. "Mother," she whispered, a protest in her tone. The queen silenced her with a look, then turned back to Daniel. "Human, you are a stranger." Here. But perhaps that is why fate brought you to me. You carry no stake in this war, no loyalty to any faction. Yet I see in you a soldier's scars. You have known battle. You have known survival. Daniel shifted uneasily. I have, he admitted. But I'm not young anymore. I'm not looking for another war. I came here by mistake. The Queen's voice grew sharp. No mistake. Destiny. She leaned forward, eyes locked onto his. Take her. Protect her. Teach her what you know. I am too old for this burden, but you still carry fire. Daniel blinked, certain he had misheard. Take her, you mean me? Yes, she whispered, her voice breaking slightly. Take my daughter instead. Guard her life as if it were your own. If she dies, our people are lost forever. Liara's face burned with outrage. Mother, you would entrust me to a human? One of the primitive kind, with no starship fleet, no throne, no blood of our kin. But the Queen's gaze was iron. He has what you lack: experience, discipline, a will that endures when empires fall. That is why I choose him. Daniel felt as though the ground had vanished beneath him. He wanted to laugh at the absurdity. A human drifter protecting an alien princess? It was madness. Yet when he looked at Liara, fire in her eyes, and at the Queen, sorrow heavy on her shoulders, something stirred in him. He had once sworn never to take another command, never to lead anyone again. Too many lives had been lost under his watch. Yet here he was, being asked not to lead armies but to guard one life that could decide the fate of a people. He let out a long breath. I'm no knight. I'm no savior. But I can try. I'll keep her safe as best I can. Liara turned away with a scoff, muttering something in her own tongue, but the Queen's face softened for the first time. Relief glimmered in her eyes. Then it is decided, she said. The human will protect the heir. The hall erupted in whispers. Guards exchanged doubtful glances. Some glared at Daniel with open hatred. A few even reached for their weapons, until the Queen silenced them with a single raised hand. Daniel could feel the weight of their stares. He knew what they thought. He was an outsider, a relic of a different race, unworthy to stand in the presence of their princess. But he also knew something else. He had made a promise, and he had never broken a promise in his life. The Queen stood, her frail form trembling, but her voice steady. She stepped down from the throne, standing before Daniel. Slowly she placed her hand on his shoulder. You may not believe in destiny, she whispered, but destiny believes in you. Daniel met her gaze and, for the first time in years, felt the heavy chain of responsibility settle around his shoulders. He had thought himself too old for battles, too tired for duty. But here, on a broken world beneath a dying Queen's eyes, a new chapter of his story had begun, and he had no choice but to follow it. The palace walls groaned with the weight of history. Stone arches cracked under age, banners faded to dull colors, and yet the guards still stood tall at every broken corner. Their eyes, however, never left Daniel. To them, he was not a protector, but an intruder, a man from a species too weak and too unknown to be trusted. Princess Liara walked with stiff shoulders, her head high, but her eyes flicked toward Daniel now and then with sharp distrust. Her every step seemed to shout that she was royalty and he was nothing. Daniel had lived long enough to recognize hostility, even when wrapped in silk robes and golden crowns. He didn't argue. He kept silent, following a pace behind her as the Queen's orders echoed in his head. Take my daughter. Protect her. It wasn't a request. It was a command wrapped in desperation. The departure at dawn, the court gathered in, the outer yard. The Queen stood tall, though her body leaned on a carved staff for balance. Liara was dressed in traveling armor, light silver plates with blue cloth flowing underneath. Her hair, bound in a high braid, caught the morning light. Daniel, in contrast, wore the same patched jacket he'd carried for years. His rifle hung on his shoulder, A few curious alien children whispered among themselves, pointing at him, some laughing, some frightened. The queen's voice rang across the courtyard. "My daughter departs to rally what remains of our people," she said. "She will not go alone. By my word, the human will guard her life." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Daniel felt their doubt like stones thrown at his back. Liara's lips tightened. When the queen finished, she turned to her daughter and whispered, though Daniel could hear every word, "Do not fight him, Liara. Learn from him. Trust is a seed. It grows slowly, but without it, you will be alone." Liara bowed stiffly, though her eyes blazed. "Yes, mother." Then the journey began. Uneasy company. Their escort was small. 4 alien warriors with long energy spears and a heavy transport beast carrying supplies. The path stretched through dry valleys where once rivers had flowed. Now only dust and jagged rocks remained. For hours they walked in silence. Daniel adjusted, the straps of his pack, his boots crunching on stone. Liara finally broke the silence. "You shouldn't be here." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Trust me, I agree." Her eyes narrowed. "My mother's mind is clouded by grief. She thinks a stranger can shield me better than my own kin. But you are fragile. Your body is weaker, your weapons crude." Daniel gave a small chuckle. "Fragile? I've been called many things, but not that. You are old." Her words cut without hesitation. "Your bones creak. If battle comes, you will fall first." Daniel stopped walking, turning to face her. His eyes, weathered by years of war, locked onto hers. "Maybe I am old," he said. "But age doesn't mean weakness. It means I've survived. And survival means I've learned how not to die." Her chin lifted. "My people do not simply survive. We conquer." Daniel sighed, walking again. "Maybe that's why your empire is in ruins." The guard stiffened at his words, but Liara only glared, speechless. The first trial by the second day, the sky darkened with ash-colored clouds. The group camped near the skeleton of a tower half swallowed by sand. The air carried an unease Daniel knew too well. "Something's coming," he muttered, scanning the horizon. Liara rolled her eyes. "You jump at shadows." Before Daniel could answer, a shrill cry split the air. From the cliffs above, shapes leapt down. Bandits, their armor pieced together from scraps, eyes wild with hunger. They carried blades of jagged metal, their screams echoing. The alien guards rushed forward, spears blazing with energy. Liara drew a curved blade from her belt, fire in her stance. Daniel dropped to one knee, rifle steady. The fight was brutal. Bandits outnumbered them 2-1. Spears flashed, steel clashed, and dust filled the air. Daniel fired carefully, each shot dropping an attacker before they could close the distance. His years of discipline showed, never wasting a bullet, always protecting the flanks. Liara fought fiercely, her blade dancing with speed, but her strikes were wild. Rage guided her more than skill. When one bandit slipped past her guard, Daniel tackled her aside, his rifle butt smashing into the attacker's jaw. "Watch your left," he barked. Her pride stung, but his words saved her life. After minutes that felt like hours, the bandits retreated, dragging their wounded away. The camp was left scarred. 2 alien guards lay dead, their spears broken. Blood stained the dust. Liara stood over the bodies, her hands trembling. "They were my people, I should have—" Daniel cut her off, voice sharp. "Don't drown in guilt. You can't save everyone. Focus on the living." Her eyes burned, but for the first time, there was no mockery in them, only confusion. Lessons by fire. That night, the survivors sat by a weak fire. The alien warriors whispered among themselves, throwing Daniel suspicious glances. Liara sat apart, blade across her lap, staring at the flames. Daniel walked over and sat beside her. She stiffened, but didn't move away. "You fight with passion," he said quietly. "That's good. But passion without control will get you killed." Her jaw tightened. And you think you can teach me? He shrugged. I've trained soldiers younger than you. Hot-headed, reckless. Most of them are buried now. The ones who listened, they lived longer. Liara turned her face toward him, eyes reflecting the firelight. And what did you teach them? That fear is normal. That discipline wins battles, not anger. That protecting others is the only fight worth having. For a long moment she was silent. Finally she asked, almost in a whisper, "Why did you save me today? You could have let me fall." Daniel looked at her steadily. "Because I made a promise to your mother, and because I don't leave people behind. Ever." Something flickered in her eyes, doubt softening, respect struggling to grow. The enemy's shadow. Days later, their journey continued. They crossed ruined bridges and plains where blackened bones still lay half-buried. Everywhere the shadow of war lingered. At night, Daniel often caught Liara studying him when she thought he wasn't looking. Her distrust hadn't vanished, but something was changing. She began asking questions about human wars, about strategies, about survival. One evening, as they set camp under the stars, she finally spoke openly. "My mother says you carry endurance my people lack, that humans endure when others break. Is that true?" Daniel gazed at the stars, remembering faces long gone. Endurance isn't glory. It's just refusing to stop when everything tells you to quit. That's what humans do best. We keep going. Liara considered this in silence. But their peace didn't last. One of the surviving guards, a tall warrior named Tareth, grew colder toward Daniel. His loyalty to the princess was unquestionable, but his hatred for the human grew daily. Daniel felt the weight of his stares, the twitch of his hand near his spear. The tension was a knife waiting to cut. Betrayal at dusk had happened at dusk, in a canyon where shadows stretched long. Daniel walked near the rear, scanning cliffs for threats. Liara rode the transport beast, speaking with Tareth. Then, too late, Daniel realized Tareth's hand had left his spear. The guard drew a dagger, his voice low but filled with venom. "He is a danger, princess. He will betray us. Better I end him now." Liara gasped, reaching for her blade, but Tareth moved fast. He turned, hurling the dagger straight at Daniel's chest. Daniel twisted, but not fast enough. The blade struck deep into his side. Pain exploded through him. He stumbled, rifle slipping from his grasp. "Human!" Liara screamed. Tareth raised his spear to finish the job, but Liara stepped between them, blade flashing. "No!" she shouted, her voice ringing with command. "You will not touch him!" The remaining guards froze, torn between loyalty and shock. Liara's eyes blazed like her mother's when she gave orders that could not be denied. Tareth hesitated, then lowered his spear, disgust written on his face. "As you wish, princess. But his weakness will cost us all." He turned away, spitting into the dust. Liara dropped to Daniel's side, pressing cloth against his wound. Blood soaked her hands. "You fool," she muttered, voice shaking. "Why did you stand behind me? Why did you take the blade meant for me?" Daniel gritted his teeth, fighting to stay conscious. "Because that's what I do. Protecting you, that's the promise." Her hands trembled, but her grip did not falter. In that moment, for the first time, Daniel saw no hatred in her eyes, only fear of losing him. Closing of Part 2 night fell heavy over the canyon. The fire crackled, weakly, shadows dancing. Daniel lay wrapped in bandages, pain clawing at his body. Liara sat beside him, her blade across her knees, eyes watching both him and the guards who whispered nearby. The princess had begun the journey unwilling to trust him, unwilling to see value in a human's presence. But now, as she guarded him, in silence one thought echoed in her mind. Perhaps my mother was right, and for the first time Liara feared what might happen if this human protector did not survive. The canyon air was cold at night, and every gust of wind made Daniel's wound ache. His side burned where Tareth's blade had struck, though the bandages slowed the bleeding. He lay on his back, staring at the alien sky. 2 moons drifting, above casting pale light across the jagged rocks. He wasn't used to being the one lying down while others stood guard. His whole life he had been the protector. Now he was the one who needed protecting, and it unsettled him more than the pain itself. Beside him, Princess Liara sat silently. Her silver armor gleamed faintly in the moonlight, her braid loose after hours of battle and tension. She hadn't left his side since dusk. Her hand still bore faint stains of his blood. Daniel turned his head slightly. "You should sleep. You'll need your strength." Her eyes, sharp and proud, flicked toward him. "And leave you to bleed, alone? No, I am not that cruel." He gave a small smile, though it cost him. "That's a start. A princess who admits she cares." She frowned. "Do not twist my words, human. I only guard what my mother commanded me to protect." Daniel chuckled, then winced as pain shot through his ribs. Fair enough, but Liara's eyes lingered on him longer than she wanted. For all her denial, she had seen him throw himself in front of her without hesitation. He had bled so she could live. None of her own guards, not even loyal Tarith, had ever done the same. A princess in conflict. The following morning, their group moved again. Daniel leaned heavily on a staff carved from canyon wood, each step slow but stubborn. Liara rode beside him, her gaze scanning the horizon for threats. The guards kept their distance. None spoke of what had happened, but their silence was louder than words. Tarith marched at the front, shoulders stiff with resentment. He had been humiliated by the princess's command, and Daniel knew it wouldn't be the last time the man tried something reckless. As they walked, Liara finally broke the silence. "You should not push yourself. The wound is deep," Daniel grunted. "If I stop moving, I'll grow roots. I'd rather walk." "You are foolish." "Maybe. But I've lived this long being foolish." She gave him a sharp look, then turned away. Yet her thoughts swirled. She wanted to hate him, to dismiss him as weak and unworthy. But his actions kept tearing holes in her pride. That night, as they set camp in the ruins of a collapsed tower, Liara sat alone on a fallen column. She stared at the stars, her mind heavy. Her mother's words echoed in her memory. "Do not fight him. Learn from him." But what could she learn from a human who barely stood upright? Yet when she closed her eyes, she remembered his voice during the battle. "Watch your left." His warning had saved her. His body had shielded her. And now, despite his wound, he refused to fall behind. She clenched her fists. The burden her mother had placed on her shoulders was growing heavier with each step, and the human's stubborn endurance forced her to question everything she believed about strength. The refugees, on the fourth day of travel, they reached the edge of a ruined village. Smoke curled weakly from broken chimneys. Dozens of alien families huddled inside the wreckage, refugees who had fled the Queen's enemies. Their eyes widened when they saw Liara, whispers spreading through the crowd. "The way, Princess?" one voice gasped. "The heir lives." They fell to their knees, bowing deeply. Children clutched their mothers, staring with awe. For a moment, Liara froze. She had expected fear or doubt, not worship. Daniel leaned close, his voice low. "They need you. Don't look away." Her heart hammered. She stepped forward, her voice ringing with the confidence she did not fully feel. "Rise. You are not slaves. You are my people. And while I breathe, you will not be abandoned." The refugees raised their heads, hope flickering in their tired faces. Liara's words had sparked something Daniel recognized well. It wasn't the authority of a queen. It was the fire of a leader who chose to stand with her people. Later, as they shared what little food they had with the villagers, Daniel pulled Liara aside. "You did well. You gave them hope." Liara frowned. "I only spoke words." "Words are weapons," Daniel said softly. "More powerful than blades. They can keep people standing when their bodies want to fall." She studied him, surprised. "Is that how your people survived?" Daniel nodded slowly. Yes, through words, promises, and the will to keep going. For the first time, Liara's pride bent slightly. Then, teach me. Teach me how to carry this burden. A lesson in leadership. The next days became lessons. Daniel, though still wounded, walked beside Liara, telling her stories of battles he had fought. Not the glorious tales of victory, but the hard truths of holding broken lines, of saving civilians, of leading when he wanted only to rest. At first, Liara resisted, scoffing at his simple strategies. But as they passed more refugees, families who looked to her with desperate eyes, she began to see his wisdom. One evening, a child from the village approached, offering her a small carved stone in the shape of a bird. Liara accepted it awkwardly, unused to such gestures. She looked at Daniel helplessly and he whispered, "Kneel, meet her at her level." Liara obeyed and the child's face lit with joy. In that moment, Liara felt something shift inside her. She was no longer just a princess hidden in a palace. She was becoming a leader among the ashes of her people. Betrayal strikes, but shadows followed them still. One night, as the group camped in a wide canyon, Daniel awoke to hushed voices. Tareth was speaking with two of the other guards. "This human weakens us," Tareth hissed. "The princess wastes time listening to him. She should be preparing for war, not playing student to a frail stranger. If he dies, the burden will return to her shoulders, where it belongs." Daniel closed his eyes, pretending to sleep. He wasn't surprised. Betrayal was always closer than the enemy outside. The next day, the ambush came. Bandits returned, more organized than before. Daniel suspected Tareth had guided them. The attack was sudden. Arrows raining from cliffs, bandits charging from both sides. The alien guards panicked, but Liara remembered Daniel's teachings. She raised her voice, commanding firmly, "Shields, form a circle, protect the civilians, first." Her voice cut through chaos and the warriors obeyed. Daniel, despite his wound, fired steady shots, dropping attackers one by one. Liara fought fiercely, her blade guided by discipline rather than rage this time. But then Tareth revealed his betrayal. In the middle of the battle, he struck down one of his own guards from behind and shouted to the bandits, "The princess is mine. Kill the human." Liara's heart clenched. Her own protector had turned traitor. The wound of trust Daniel barely dodged Tareth's strike. His body screamed in pain, but he forced himself to fight. The two men clashed, spear against rifle butt, strength against experience. Tareth sneered, "You don't belong here, human. This is our war." Daniel gritted his teeth. "Then why are you stabbing your own people in the back?" Their struggle ended when Liara herself intervened. With a cry, she drove her blade between them, knocking Tareth's spear aside. Her eyes blazed with fury. "You betray not only me but all who look to us for hope. I will not forgive it." She struck swift, her blade cutting across his chest. Tareth stumbled, gasping, before collapsing into the dust. The bandits, seeing their ally fall, lost heart. Daniel barked orders to press forward, and together with Liara and the remaining guards, they forced the attackers to retreat. The battle ended, but not without cost. Another guard lay dead, and Daniel's wound reopened. As Liara pressed cloth to his side, tears burned her eyes. "You risk yourself again and again, even when betrayal waits behind every wall. Why?" Daniel looked at her, his voice quiet but firm. "Because trust is always a risk, but without it, no one stands together. Remember that." Closing of part 3 that night, the firelight flickered across Liara's face. She held the carved stone bird in her hand, her mother's words in her heart and Daniel's teachings in her mind. She realized the truth at last. The burden of trust was not something she could carry alone. She needed others, flawed, fragile, but willing to bleed for her. She looked at Daniel asleep beside the fire and whispered softly so only the stars could hear, "You are more than a protector, human. You are my teacher." And with that, Princess Liara's heart began to shift. The fire of pride was still there, but it was now joined by something stronger, respect for the human who refused to abandon her. even when his own life hung by a thread. The dawn came cold and gray after the betrayal. Smoke from the battle still lingered over the canyon. The surviving refugees moved slowly, carrying the wounded, whispering fears that the enemy would return. The princess walked among them, her blade still stained, her face stern. Daniel leaned against his staff, watching her. His side ached, every breath reminding him of the dagger wound. Yet when he saw Liara kneel to comfort a frightened child, his chest warmed. She was no longer just a stubborn heir clinging to pride. She was learning what it meant to carry her people. When she returned to his side, her eyes shone with exhaustion, but also determination. They look to me now. I feel it. Their hope rests on me. But I am afraid. Daniel met her gaze. Steady. Good. Fear means you understand what's at stake. Only fools lead without fear. The question is, will you let it control you or guide you? Liara tightened her jaw. I will not let it control me. Then you're already stronger than most generals I've known, Daniel said. Her lips curved slightly, though she tried to hide it. Preparing the stronghold, by the 5th day, the group reached the ruins of an ancient fortress carved into the cliffs. Its gates were broken, walls scarred by blasts, but parts of it still stood strong. The refugees looked at it with awe and dread, once a place of pride, now a symbol of loss. This will be our stand, Liara declared, her voice ringing against stone. We will not run any longer. The refugees hesitated, but Daniel nodded. A fortress, even broken, is better than open ground. With work, we can make it defensible. Liara turned to him. Show me. Teach me what must be done. And so, for days, Daniel guided her. He walked the walls with her, pointing out weaknesses. Rebuild the barricades here. Place watchers on that tower. Dig trenches to slow their charge. And always keep a reserve ready to protect the weak. Liara listened carefully, repeating his lessons to the warriors and refugees. At first they questioned her, but when Daniel stood beside her, lending his voice, they obeyed. Soon the fortress hummed with activity. Broken stones became barricades, shattered beams turned into defenses, and hope began to bloom. At night, Daniel would sit by the fire teaching her more. He drew maps in the dirt explaining flanking maneuvers, choke points, and the importance of discipline. She soaked in every word, her sharp mind turning theory into practice. You are not only teaching me to fight, she said one evening. You're teaching me to think. Daniel smiled faintly. That's the real battle. Muscles tire, blades break, but a sharp mind, that wins wars. The Queen's shadow as the fortress grew stronger, whispers spread among the refugees. Some claimed the Queen was dying, her health failing faster than expected. Others said enemies massed outside, preparing to crush the last resistance. Liara carried this weight in silence. One night, she sat alone on the walls, the carved stone bird the child had given her clutched in her palm, her eyes filled with doubt. Daniel found her there, his steps slow but steady. Can't sleep? She shook her head. I hear their whispers. They fear my mother will die soon, and when she does, they will all look to me. What if I am not ready? Daniel leaned against the wall beside her. No one is ever ready. Not kings, not generals, not even old soldiers like me. You learn by doing. You lead by standing when no one else will. Liara's voice trembled. And if I fail? Then you get back up, Daniel said firmly. That's what matters, not perfection, endurance. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Endurance, she repeated, as if committing it to her heart. The enemy arrives. The attack came at dawn. Scouts rushed into the fortress, their voices panicked. An army approaches, hundreds strong. The refugees froze in terror. Warriors tightened their grips on spears. All eyes turned to Liara. For the first time, Daniel did not step forward. He remained silent, letting her stand alone. Liara's heart pounded, but she raised her chin. Prepare the defenses. Every able hand will fight, not for conquest, but for survival. We stand together or we fall apart, Her voice carried strength, and slowly fear gave way to determination. Daniel's chest swelled with pride. She was ready. When the enemy came, the sky darkened with dust from their march. Banners of crimson fluttered, and their war cries echoed across the canyon. The fortress trembled under the sound. Liara stood atop the walls, blade raised high. "This is our home. We will not give it to them." A roar rose from her people. The Battle of the Fortress. The enemy charged, waves of armored soldiers crashing against the barricades, the air filled with smoke, fire, and screams. Daniel moved through, the chaos like a shadow guiding the defenses. "Hold the line, don't break formation, archers, fire on my mark." Liara fought at the front, her blade flashing with precision. No longer wild with rage, her strikes were measured, her movements disciplined. She remembered Daniel's lessons, and each one saved lives. At one point, a breach opened in the barricade. Refugees panicked, children screaming. Liara dashed forward, rallying the defenders. "Protect the weak. Drive them back." Her courage sparked others. Warriors surged with renewed strength, closing the gap. Daniel, bleeding from reopened wounds, refused to rest. He climbed the walls, directing fire, pulling wounded to safety, fighting like a man possessed. "Captain," Liara shouted when she saw him falter. "I'm fine," he growled, though his body shook. "Focus on your people." And she did. Turning the tide, hours dragged on. The fortress walls shook under repeated assaults, but Liara's voice never wavered. She moved where the line weakened, inspiring courage with her presence. At last, Daniel spotted an opportunity. The enemy commander had overextended, pushing too deep into the canyon. "Liara," he called, pointing. "Now! Strike their flank!" Without hesitation, she rallied a small force and charged. Her blade cut through enemy ranks, and her warriors followed with fierce determination. The enemy, caught off guard, faltered. Cheers erupted from the fortress as the enemy began to retreat. Liara stood tall, her armor dented, her face streaked with sweat and dust, but her eyes blazing with triumph. "We did it," she whispered. Daniel, leaning heavily on his staff, smiled through bloodied lips. "No, you did it." Aftermath: when the battle ended, the fortress was scarred but still standing. The refugees gathered in the courtyard, chanting Liara's name. She looked overwhelmed, her hands trembling as children clung to her. Warriors bowed, and the people called her their leader. Daniel watched from the side, pride swelling in his chest. She had become what her mother had hoped for, a leader forged not in palaces but in the fires of survival. That night, as the fires burned and the people celebrated, Liara approached Daniel. "You once told me that trust is always a risk," she said softly. "I see it now. I trusted you, and because of that, my people live." Daniel shook his head. "You trusted yourself. That's the real victory." But Liara shook her head firmly. "No. Without you, I would have been nothing but a frightened heir. You gave me the tools. You gave me the strength." Her eyes glistened, and for a moment, her voice was no longer that of a princess, but of a daughter. "When my mother is gone, I will still have you, won't I?" Daniel hesitated. His body was failing, his wounds deeper than he admitted, but he saw the hope in her eyes and forced a steady smile. "As long as I draw breath, I'll stand by you." Closing of part 4. The fortress slept under the stars, the people safe for now. Liara walked the walls, shoulders straight, head high, her voice echoing in her heart. "I will not fail them." Below, Daniel lay in silence, his body weak, but his spirit unbroken. He had thought himself too old for war, too tired for duty. Yet, here he was, guiding a princess into becoming a queen. And in the ashes of a dying empire, a human and an alien had forged something unshakable: trust, respect, and the promise of survival. The fortress was quiet after the battle, though the silence was not peace. Smoke still drifted from burned barricades, and the cries of the wounded echoed in the night. Yet for the first time in years, the people of the fallen empire felt something: rare hope. Princess Liara walked among her people with her head high. They reached for her hands, bowed their heads, and whispered her name. She smiled faintly at them, though her heart remained heavy. Every victory carried loss, and the faces of the fallen haunted her. Daniel sat apart, leaning against the cold stone wall, his staff beside him. His wound had worsened during the fight, blood soaking through the bandages. Yet his eyes followed Liara with quiet pride. He had seen leaders born in battle before, but none had risen as quickly or as fiercely as she had. When Liara noticed him, she knelt at his side. "You should rest, you bleed too much." Daniel chuckled weakly. "Rest is for when the fight is done. And something tells me we're not finished yet." Liara's chest tightened. She wanted to protest, to order him to lie down. But she stopped. She remembered his lessons: discipline, endurance, sacrifice. If he chose to keep standing, she would not dishonor him by treating him as weak. The Queen's final message. 2 nights later, a messenger arrived from the capital, an old servant of the royal palace. His armor broken, his eyes filled with sorrow. He bowed before Liara. "Your Majesty, your mother, the Queen, she does not have long. She calls for you." Liara's heart trembled. She had feared this moment. With haste, she prepared to travel, though the road was dangerous. Daniel, against every healer's advice, insisted on going with her. "You're in no state to travel," Liara argued. Daniel met her eyes, his voice calm but unshakable. "If this is her last breath, she'll want to know you're safe. And I promised her I'd keep you alive. I won't break that promise now." Liara did not argue again. The journey was slow, filled with tension. Enemy patrols still scoured the land, searching for the princess. Twice, Daniel's sharp eyes spotted ambushes before they struck, saving them from disaster. Each time, Liara realized how much she had come to rely on him. At last, they reached the capital, or what remained of it. The once mighty palace stood in ruins, its towers broken, its banners burned. Within the shattered throne room, Queen Serenia lay upon a bed of stone, her body frail, her breath shallow. Liara rushed to her side, taking her hand. "Mother." The Queen's eyes fluttered open, and a faint smile touched her lips. "My daughter, you have grown." Her gaze shifted weakly to Daniel. "And you kept your word." Daniel knelt beside her, bowing his head. "I did my best, Your Majesty." But it was Liara who rose. "She's the one they follow now." The Queen's eyes lingered on him, soft with gratitude. "Then I chose well." She turned back to Liara, her voice barely a whisper. "The crown is yours, now. Lead them not with pride but with love. Protect them as this human has protected you." Liara's tears fell freely. "I will, Mother, I swear it." The Queen's hand trembled, then fell still. Her eyes closed, her face peaceful at last. Liara bowed her head, grief heavy in her chest. Daniel rested a hand gently on her shoulder. "She believed in you. Now it's your turn to believe in yourself." The gathering storm news of the Queen's death spread quickly. Some loyalists swore immediate allegiance to Liara, but others whispered rebellion. Enemies beyond the capital saw weakness and prepared to strike. Scouts reported that the usurper lords, those who had torn the empire apart, were marching together for one final blow. They sought to erase the last of the royal line. In the fortress, warriors and refugees gathered in fear. Could they withstand another army larger than the last? Liara stood before them, her heart heavy but her voice clear. "My mother has fallen," she declared. "But her spirit is not gone. It lives in us, in every hand that still dares to fight, in every heart that still dares to hope. We will not surrender. We will not kneel. Today we rise, not for empire but for survival for each other." Her words ignited the crowd. For the first time, the people chanted not only her name but the word Queen. Daniel stood at her side, leaning on his staff, his body weary but his eyes sharp. He whispered so only she could hear. That's the voice of a ruler. Hold on to it. The final battle. The enemy came at dawn, their army vast, their banners black as night. The fortress walls shook with the sound of drums, the sky darkened by dust. Liara stood at the front, her blade gleaming, Daniel beside her. The battle was fierce. The enemy struck with fury, waves crashing against the defenses. Arrows rained down, stones shattered, and the fortress groaned under the assault. Liara fought like a storm, her blade cutting through foes, her voice rallying her people. Stand, for your families, for your future. Daniel moved through the chaos, guiding, directing, protecting. Though his body faltered, his spirit burned. When a breach opened in the wall, he was there, rallying warriors to seal it. When fear threatened to break the line, his steady voice brought courage. But the enemy pressed harder. Their commander, a towering warlord clad in black armor, broke through the gates with his guard. He roared a challenge, pointing his massive blade at Liara. The warriors faltered, fear gripping them. But Liara stepped forward, blade ready. "This is my fight," she said. Daniel's voice was calm but firm. "No leader stands alone. I'll be with you." Together they faced the warlord. The last stand. The duel shook the courtyard. The warlord's blade crashed like thunder, but Liara met each strike with precision, her movements guided by Daniel's lessons. Still, the enemy's strength was overwhelming. When the warlord's blade swung wide, aiming for Liara's chest, Daniel stepped in front of her. The strike slammed into his staff, splintering it, and threw him to the ground. Pain ripped through his body, blood spilling from reopened wounds. "Daniel!" Liara cried, fury surging. With a roar, she launched her counterattack, her blade flashing like lightning. Strike after strike, she drove the warlord back, her will unbreakable. At last, with a final cry, she drove her blade through his chest. The warlord fell, his armor crashing against stone. Silence fell. Then the people roared, their cheers echoing through the ruins. The enemy, leaderless, broke and fled. Liara stood over the fallen warlord, chest heaving, her blade trembling. Then she turned to Daniel. The protector's legacy, he lay on the ground, his breath shallow, blood staining the earth. Liara dropped, to her knees clutching his hand. "You can't leave me now," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You promised." Daniel's eyes met hers, tired but gentle. "And I kept it. You're safe. Your people are safe." "No." She shook her head fiercely. "Not without you. You are part of this. You are my protector, my teacher, my family." Daniel smiled faintly. "Then carry me in your memory. Lead them the way you led today. That's how I'll live." His hand grew still. His eyes closed peacefully. Liara bowed her head over him, grief shaking her body. Yet when she stood again, her tears dried on her cheeks, her blade lifted high. She turned to her people, her voice breaking but strong. "The human is gone, but his courage lives in us. We will build a new world, not of conquest but of endurance, of hope." The people roared in agreement, chanting not only her name but his, Daniel, protector of the crown. Closing of part 5 years later, songs would be sung of that day, of a queen who rose from ashes, and of a human who gave his last breath to shield her. His name became legend, whispered in the stars, not as a conqueror, but as a protector whose legacy shaped the future of a people not his own. And whenever Liara held the carved stone bird in her hand, she remembered his words: endurance, protect the living, never leave anyone behind. Thus the human story did not end with his death. It lived on in every heartbeat of a people who would forever remember that once, in their darkest hour, a man too old for war became the strongest shield of all.